We gotta keep it.
As former world chess champion Garry Kasparov said, tactics is knowing what to do when there's something to do. Strategy is knowing what to do when there is nothing to do. Now, in this video, we're not going to focus on the tactical skills like copywriting, coding, or sales. Instead, we're going to unpack 3 foundational skills that underpin everything you do on your money-making journey. So to build our millionaire skill stack, we begin by laying a foundation with these 3 skills. The first is energy management. Now, I cringe whenever I hear someone say time is your most valuable asset. This phrase is like nails on a chalkboard to me because it's something that most people say and they accept at face value, and yet it's completely wrong. Truth is, your time actually has 0 value to anyone. If it did, you could just show up to work, you could pass out, and you'd still get paid. And since none of us are simply getting paid to show up, there must be something else at play. So let's do a little thought experiment to prove the point. Imagine your boss or your spouse, they walk into the room right now and they ask, hey, can I get a minute of your time? Now, unless you're some sort of time wizard, you probably don't have a pile of time just sitting in the corner you can give that person, right? So what is it they're really asking for? Well, it's simple. They're asking for your attention, which is a result of your focus. Now, because of this, I used to say that focus is your most valuable asset, but the truth is, I was wrong. I didn't go deep enough. I didn't get to the true first principle, which is a physics way of looking at the world that requires us to boil things down to their most fundamental truth before building back up. And so what is the fundamental truth of focus? Well, it's simple. Your ability to focus is a result of your ability to expend energy. Energy, therefore, is your most valuable asset. And it's the management of this asset you must first master on your journey to building $1 million skill stack. So here's my 3M framework to mastering energy management. It goes measure, manage, maximize. Step 1, we're going to measure our energy. Most of us are incredibly poor judges of how we spend our time and energy. For instance, a recent study found that 78% of people underestimate how much time they spend on their phone each day. When asked, how much time do you think you spend in front of a screen? The average guess was 3 hours and 42 minutes, whereas the actual average was 5 hours and 42 minutes. That's 2 entire hours of energy drain that people simply didn't realize they were experiencing. Becoming a master of your energy begins with first understanding exactly where it's going, which is why we conduct an energy audit. Simply put, an energy audit is where you track what you did and how you felt every hour of the day for about 2 weeks. And after about a week, you're going to start noticing trends in how your energy levels ebb and they flow throughout the day. Now, there's a bunch of softwares you can use to collect this information, but 2 of my favorites are just rise.io or just Google spreadsheets that you update at the top of every hour with a note about what you did in the previous hour, along with a rating of 1 to 10 for how energized you felt during that period. With this information in hand, we move to the next step in the 3M framework. We manage our energy. Now, as they say, that which gets measured gets managed. Well, now it's time to take the data we've collected and create a game plan for our day. Interestingly, you might notice that this process is identical to the steps we take to get our personal finances in order. First, we'd conduct a financial audit to see where our money's going, and then we create a budget to determine where we want our money to go in the future. Pretty cool, huh? Anyways, there's something else I want to point out, and it's going to seem painfully obvious, but stick with me. You are not a perpetual energy machine. The truth is, you only have so much energy to expend each day before you need to recharge the system. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But because we only have a limited amount of energy to draw upon, it's imperative we spend what we do have on high quality activities that are going to move us meaningfully towards our goals. The tool I use to ensure this happens is called time blocking. Simply put, I sit down every night before bed and I plot out the next day hour by hour. To go even deeper into my system of time blocking, check out the video we did called The Productivity System That Made Me a Millionaire in 3 years. I'll drop a link in the description. Now, to use the information you've gathered during your energy audit to maximum effect, I recommend you pay attention to the times throughout the day where you appear to be at your best and your worst. For myself, I tend to be at my highest energy levels mid-morning around 9 to 11 a.m. So I use this time to focus on the absolute most important tasks. On the other hand, I'm at my lowest energy levels around 2 to 4, which is when I prioritize meetings, emails, or just other mundane activities that don't require me to be at my best. Now, by arranging your day with this sort of energy consciousness, I think you're going to notice a rather quick and incredible boost to your overall productivity. With that said, the biggest gains will most definitely come as a result of the next step in the 3M framework: maximizing your energy. So here's another interesting parallel with personal finance. Many financial experts would lead you to believe that the best way to become wealthy is by foregoing your morning latte and instead just save, save, save. However, if you've been hanging around these parts for a while, you know I have a different approach. Personally, I think if your goal is to build wealth, most of your time should be spent on increasing your earning capacity. And it's the same with energy management. The bigger your pool of energy to draw from, the more you'll be able to get done, right? Right. So how do we do this? How do we increase our energy capacity? Well, there's really only 3 ways of increasing or improving the quality of your focus, which I call the 3 levers of energy. You have sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And this is a massive topic. I can't do it justice here in this video. I'm actually working on another video at the moment that deep dives into these 3 levers, which I'll be sharing with you guys here in a few weeks. So if you want to be notified when that drops, make sure you hit the subscribe button. All right, so that's energy management, and it should be pretty obvious how developing this foundational skill will help you in every aspect of building a business, not to mention your life as a whole. This next foundational millionaire skill, though, is not only my personal favorite, but was also found in a poll of 1,500 executives to be the most important skill in the modern workforce. It's creativity. Now, when most people think of creativity, they think of painting a landscape or writing a book or playing the piano. But this type of artistic creativity isn't what we're talking about here. See, creativity as I define it is the ability to combine pieces of information in new, novel ways. When viewed through this lens, we all have the opportunity to display creativity in our lives. Now, the reason this is such a valuable skill is because creativity, by definition, cannot be automated or systematized. So while more and more tasks will be outsourced to robots, AI, and cheap labor, the demand for true creativity is only going to increase. So if you want to level up your earning potential, then focus on becoming more creative. And here's how to do it in 3 steps. Number 1, realize that curiosity fuels creativity. I've hired hundreds of employees over the years, and I believe that curiosity is a better predictor of success than intelligence, charisma, or even work ethic. Why? It's because the people with insatiable curiosity, the ones always asking why and digging just a little bit deeper to find the answer, well, they have a vast reservoir of inspiration to pull from, which in turn leads them to being far more creative than their counterparts. And this makes sense if we think back to the definition of creativity, which is the ability to combine pieces of information. Of course, the more information you have access to, the more likely you are to make novel connections. So we should aim to keep our creativity fuel tank full by becoming a sponge that absorbs information from as many areas of life as possible. This could be in the form of reading books, listening to podcasts, it could be watching videos, or just whatever. In most cases, it doesn't really matter what form the information takes, just so long as you're acquiring it. All right, so step 2 in thinking more creatively is to use the 3 Bs. If you're like most people, you don't really have a process for being creative. Ideas, they just sort of pop up out of nowhere, which isn't terribly helpful when we need to be creative on demand. So an easy way to get the wheel spinning is by recognizing that there's really only 3 things you can do with a piece of information. You can bend it, you can blend it, or you can break it. And these are called the 3 Bs of creativity. To bend, we simply take an idea or a product and we just modify it slightly from its original version or usage. For instance, a piece of driftwood that's transformed into a dining room table. Now to blend, we're going to smush 2 ideas together, like combining a telephone with a camera to come up with a cell phone capable of taking pictures. And to break, we deconstruct something into its individual parts before reassembling to create something new. The perfect example of this is the work of Picasso, whose paintings appear broken and then put back together from different angles and perspectives. Now, the 3 Bs are a great way of priming the creative engines, but they aren't the only 3 Bs, which leads us to step 3. To foster creativity, use the other 3 Bs of creativity. Now, the truth is, you can't force the act of creativity. Just sitting in the corner and trying to think harder isn't always going to cut it. But there are some things we can do that create a more inviting environment for the muse to appear. These are bed, bath, and bus, which are inconveniently also called the 3 Bs of creativity. I don't know why people in the creativity community, they just must love triads that start with the letter B. Anyways, these 3 Bs stem from the knowledge that creativity tends to arise during states of relaxation, which are preceded by long periods of focused thinking. Bed is just another word for sleep, and it's where we recruit our subconscious mind to get in on the action. A quick 20-30 minute nap after a bout of intense focus or learning has been shown in students to increase retention and understanding of the topic that was being studied. In addition, It also sparks imaginative leaps that the conscious mind had been struggling to make on its own. Now, bath represents leisure or recreation, a place where the mind can just escape from the hullabaloo of life and for once, just hear itself think. This could be an actual bath, it could be video games, or just mindless television. Now, bus represents movement, though I personally think this one's a bit of a stretch by whoever was first thinking up the 3 Bs. Now, with that said, this is possibly the most powerful of the 3, or at least it is for me, because humans did not evolve to move and think separately. These actions are closely intertwined in the development of our species, and this is why Nietzsche said all truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. For what it's worth, I don't disagree. Now, creativity is great and all, but I've discovered something interesting over the years. You could be the most fantastically creative person in the world, but if you lack this third foundational millionaire skill, then you will simply be an agent of chaos, and there's just not a lot of money to be had there. So with that in mind, it's imperative that in addition to cultivating creativity, we also develop the foundational skill of judgment. As Naval Ravikant says, in an age of infinite leverage, judgment becomes the most important skill. Now, in the beginning of your career, you're not going to have very much leverage. So at that point, your only job is to go out there and get leverage, whether that be in the form of labor leverage, capital leverage, technology leverage, or media leverage. Understanding leverage is actually another foundational millionaire skill, but I'm not going to cover it here because I already did that in a video called 4 Passive Income Ideas, how I made $125,000 last month. Don't be turned off by the clickbaity title. That video is all about mastering leverage. But here's the thing. Once you acquire leverage, you got to slow down and apply judgment because the potential ramifications of each decision you make become amplified to a degree that carries a lot of potential consequence. The problem for most of us is we weren't ever really taught a systematic process for how to make good decisions. And it's interesting because studies show we make over 30,000 decisions a day. So you'd think we'd get better at the process over time, right? Well, not necessarily, because if we're not practicing with intent, then we're not really practicing. We're just going through the motions. It's the same whether you're trying to shoot a basketball better, to type faster with fewer errors, or to make better decisions. And the main obstacle I see that stands in our way of improving our judgment is the fact that we don't really have an objective measure against which we can assess the quality of our decisions. So most of the time, we make a decision based on mostly arbitrary feelings that we will probably forget as soon as the decision is made. And then at some point in the future, we get the results of that decision, and then we think back and attempt to justify the decision. At no point in that process is there an opportunity for reflection, iteration, or feedback. And therefore, our judgment doesn't necessarily improve. If you want to develop better judgment and make better decisions, then you must create a system that allows for conscious reflection. Now, if you don't already have one, that's okay. You can use mine. Here's my 3-part system to making better decisions. It starts by conducting a decision audit. So you remember our financial and energy audit? Well, this is no different. To conduct a decision audit, at the end of each day, just think back on 1 to 5 decisions you made and reflect on what caused you to make those decisions. For instance, often we make a business decision from a survival perspective, thinking we've got to make money at all costs, or maybe for codependent reasons because we're afraid of letting people down. The driving force behind your decisions are probably going to be different than mine. So I can't give you overly detailed advice here, but the key is to just take notice of your patterns. More often than not, we make decisions based on emotions that we then justify with logic. So the big question to ask here is, what are the primary emotions driving my decisions? Once you know the answer to that question, you unlock this magical ability to see the emotion cropping up at the moment of decision. And this is important because it's only in observing the emotion that we can then remove the emotion. And that is the ultimate desired end state we're trying to get to. We're trying to remove emotion as much as possible from our decision-making process because, as Tom Bilyeu says, emotions can make dots feel like they connect in your mind, even when they don't actually connect in reality. So to make better decisions, we have to operate as much as possible in the world of objective reality. Anything less is simply a recipe for delusion. All right, now step 2 in making better decisions is to keep a decision journal. It's probably not an overstatement to say that the scientific process changed the progression of human civilization. At its core, the process is simple, and yet the results are profound. It all starts with a hypothesis, which is really just a fancy word for an educated guess. And perhaps this doesn't seem like a big deal, But in my mind, the whole process hinges on this first step, because unless you have an expectation for what you believe will occur, you're really just collecting data and not necessarily getting any closer to formulating an explanation for why the thing did whatever the thing ultimately did. And this is vitally important to developing judgment, because most of us, we make tens of thousands of decisions a day, but we never stop to consider what we think is going to happen, why we think it's going to happen, what else might happen, why we think this happening would be better than that happening, and what is the probability that this and not that is going to happen. So a tool that I found incredibly valuable in helping me systematically work through these questions is called the Decision Journal. So my team and I are actually working on designing a decision journal that walks through the exact framework that I use to make life's big decisions. And we're hoping to launch that later this year. If you have any interest in getting a copy of that when it's released, then check out the link in the description to get on a wait list. And in the meantime, I'm going to send you a free digital copy of my one-page decision journal template, which you can start using right now to improve your decision-making abilities. All right, so now the last tool I want to share with you on your journey to developing better judgment is the idea of creating decision commandments. See, the problem with decisions is that it's often not a simple matter of, do you want this or do you want that? It's more like, do you want this, and this, or do you want that, and that? Also this. It's nice to have options, but only up to a certain point. Beyond that, you enter into a realm of overwhelm, and that's really never a good place from which to make a decision. So to simplify matters, I find it helpful to first create boundaries, which you can do by creating your 10 commandments or 15 commandments or however many you want. These are the guiding principles about how you think your business or life should work. They are the litmus test which all decisions must pass. And you'd be surprised by just how many decisions are immediately eliminated when put through the filter of your 10 commandments. As a result, you don't have to waste mental bandwidth and energy sifting through so many options. Instead, you spend more time weighing the truly quality candidates. For instance, here are some of my 10 commandments. Lead with value, over-deliver always, create more, consume less, resourcefulness beats resources, and vulnerability requires strength. Now, will each of these commandments apply to every decision? Certainly not. The point of this exercise is to simply chalk the field and define how you intend to play the game. It's only once you've done this that you'll be able to look back at your performance to judge whether or not you played well. Because as Jean-Luc Picard said to Data in Star Trek, you can do everything right and still lose. That's not weakness, that's life. Well, the reverse of that is to recognize that you can make all the wrong decisions and still win. Luck, after all, is very much a thing. But if we want to increase the likelihood of achieving consistent success in life, you can't rely solely on luck. And at the end of the day, there is no greater counterbalance to luck than good judgment. And if you combine judgment with creativity and energy management, you will have the ability to go out into the world and accomplish practically anything you set your mind to. And if that's not worth far more than $1 million, then I don't know what is. Hey, what's up, guys? So I read something recently that I want to share with you because it had a really profound effect on me. It's from a book called Make Something Wonderful. It's about Steve Jobs' life. He said, there's a lot of ways to be as a person. And some people, they express their deep appreciation in different ways. But one of the ways that I believe people express their appreciation to the rest of humanity is to make something wonderful and put it out there. And you never meet the people, you never shake their hands, you never hear their story or tell yours, but somehow in the act of making something with a great deal of care and love, something's transmitted there. And it's a way of expressing to the rest of our species our deep appreciation. And so I just wanted to read that and share that because I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch these videos. Our team puts a ton of love, a ton of care into making something wonderful. And so we appreciate you giving us that opportunity. If you want to get more like this, guys, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I can't wait to see you in the next video. But until then, stay hyper-focused, my friend.